Hello, my name is Nancy. In this tutorial, I'll show you an example of how you could use the REST API in JavaScript on a web page. Here I have a little demo application, a page named Demo Patch HTML, and I've opened it in a browser so you can see what I'm doing here is having the user enter a contact ID and then a last name. When the button's clicked, the last name of that contact is changed to what was entered. So this demo will use the patch operation to update data. Now I want to look at the code behind this, but first let me remind you that this is just a demo. It's deliberately simplified, so this is not code you should copy and use in production. So now we can go to the code in Notepad++ and see that below the JavaScript at the top, I have the HTML form that takes in a last name and calls a JavaScript function named changeName. Now back up here at the top in the script is that function changeName. And the first thing I'll do here is get whatever last name was entered into the form. Then I'll instantiate the contact object to be updated. Remember that the name of a contact is itself an object, and one of its properties is last, which here I'm setting to the last name from the input form. Now I'll use the stringify method of the JSON class to turn that into a string to be sent with my patch request. From the form, I'll get the ID of the contact to be changed and use that to create my URL, which points to my site, then services, REST, connect, the version of Connect I'm using, contacts, and the ID of the contact who's going to get updated. Now I'm ready to make my request. I'll instantiate the XML HTTP request object and then use its open method with the verb type and the URL for the resource being updated. So now you're asking, why is this post? Because you're trying to do a patch operation. Well, sometimes the browser or client application doesn't support patch requests, or sometimes a network blocks them. So to get around that, you can do what I'm doing here. Make a post request and then add a header like this, XHTTP method override, with a value of patch. This is called HTTP tunneling, and it's handy to know, so that's why I'm showing you here. And there are a few other header settings we'll need. Type can just be text HTML, and I'm setting the content length to the length of my variable named data, which holds that string. Here I'm setting the connection to automatically close when this call completes, and then the next lines handle the credentials required to authorize this code to access my site. Here are the credentials themselves, and I'm using this built-in function to encode them in base 64, and then a header to say that the authorization type is basic and include that encoded string. Now I'll execute my request call, sending it the data. Let me quickly switch over here for a minute to the agent desktop to show this contact, red adder, whose ID is 2. Now I'm going to open my HTML page in Internet Explorer, which I'm using partly because I want you to see this little warning that pops up. It tells me that by default, IE won't run scripts in web pages locally, but of course in this case I'll authorize it. Now I'll enter the last name Dare and click the button. So if I now go back to the agent desktop and refresh contacts, I can see that the new last name is Dare. Thanks for watching.